Morning, everyone. I imagine this video could be the first in a series called Adventures in Therapy, which might be a bit of a misleading title because some people might assume that I would be the one in therapy and not the one, conducting it. Especially because a lot of people understand that you're not allowed to talk about your clients. There's this thing called confidentiality. And with the type of clients that I work with, it's even more so. There's stricter laws than other therapists have to adhere to. In particular, there is a group of laws that come out of state governments, and there's federal government, and you always have to take whichever one is stricter. But on the federal side of things, most people understand the word HIPAA if they have any background in medicine or in therapy. HIPAA basically prevents you from talking about what goes on with clients, yada yada yada. But more than that, there is a stricter law, in fact, 42 CFR, and that's a federal law where a lot of times the same circumstance is talked about, but 42 CFR has stricter consequences or stricter rules about it. So it's not just HIPAA that I have to dance around. If I'm going to tell anyone about my job, I have to make sure that I have everything under HIPAA covered, everything under 42 CFR covered, and everything that might be unique to the state that I'm in. So, basically, the things that I cannot talk about. Number one, I can't tell who is in a program that I work for. And it's so strict that if I were to see someone, say, out at the flea market, just walking by them, I'm not allowed to say hello to somebody that I might have seen for weeks at a time. I have to pretend like they don't exist to me. Like, I don't have any clue who that person is, because if somebody else knew me in that public space, they might know what I do for a living. And they might know that anyone I recognize might have come from a program that I'm working in. So, until somebody comes up and introduces themselves to me, I can't say hello to them if they are a former client or current client. I have to just pretend like I don't know that person, which is weird. So that's how strict it is. You can't say hello. Okay? Unless they come up and introduce themselves to your friends that you're with. Tell the person that they're with that you were their therapist. Then it becomes okay because they are the ones who disclosed. So I'm not allowed to talk about prognostic records, and that's details of how treatment is supposed to help a certain client, like just vaguely, if a client had a gambling problem and you gave them specific steps to help curb their problem, like getting rid of certain triggers in their life, then you're not allowed to say that you have this client who you did this with, and you basically just can't talk about how the treatment will help a client. And you should not even, try to say that there is this treatment that I did, because there could be somebody out there in the world who is doing this, and then the actions that they do could connect what your story was to their identity. You know, if there's somebody who obsessively avoids certain behaviors like commercials, tries to hide his eyes from billboards. Every time he sees a gambling billboard, he slaps himself in the face 3 times to remember that he's not supposed to go there. You know, anything like that, if you were to tell that story and then they were actually to find the person doing that, they would connect that and make their identity known. So you can't talk about prognostic records. Diagnostic records can't talk about, of course, but that's pretty common for just those people who have to adhere to HIPAA. Treatment records, what's being done to a client while they're in treatment. Attendance records. Without a ROI, that's a release of information, without a signed piece of paper from a client saying that you can tell someone how many times they've gone and if they missed a session and stuff, you can't tell someone, even though that client might have a parole or probation officer that's assigned to them, and that officer might come right down to your office and flash a badge and say, I need to know if this client missed any of your sessions. You can't tell them without the ROI. Without that release of information, it's, you know, they can huff and puff all they want. You can't tell them. And that's even as strict as, like, if someone were to come to the front desk of a facility where there's inpatients and say, we're looking for this particular person, you know, in conjunction with our investigation of a terrorist plot. We're not allowed to give them a list of people who are there, or any sort of acknowledgement that someone is or ever was or wasn't in our program. It's something that we got to call up the lawyer and say, hey, could you deal with this? Because there's hoops that have to be jumped through. We can go into the patient quarters where they might be sleeping, you know, and say, hey, would you like to give yourself up? You know, there's some people out there and they're going to create a lot of problems for us. And they're going to get you in the end, but you're still allowed to stay here like it's a safe zone. You know, we can't tell them that you're here, but they're out there looking for you. You know, if you want to go turn yourself in, you know, and maybe it'll happen. Maybe not. Maybe they'll try to hide out as long as they possibly can. But you can't tell anyone the attendance status of a client. You can't, without a release of information, tell anyone how the client is progressing. Like, are they getting better? Again, even if it's somebody who referred that client to your program. If your client is in a program that deals just with people who were referred by courts, the judge will have a hard time ordering you to give up information on how well they're doing without a release of information from the client. We also can't tell people about the physical whereabouts of clients, and I think that the biggest problem in some of the programs that I've seen in the city that I'm in is that Google does not want to comply with the wishes of certain programs. That being, I know of at least 2 battered women's therapy programs that are listed on Google Maps that would like to not be listed, but so many people keep on putting them back on. And these are places where women would go to get away from men who are violent and will track them down. But Google likes to relist that place on maps, even though they keep requesting to take it down. You know, there's a reason why we want it taken down. You know, it'll just pop up on the map again. And, yeah, there are confidential locations and safe houses that just get outed by stupidity. Internally, with the company that I work for, there are places where we never publish in like a brochure or anything the address of that place. There's all sorts of addresses of places that are published, but not those places. Yeah, you never ever wanted to give away where a patient is located. You get a call on the phone, and it doesn't matter who it is. You know, you say, sorry, I can neither confirm or deny that patient exists. And so that's all of what I can't talk about. Basically, anything about a client. Anything. If there's a specific client involved, I can't talk about it. But I can talk about theories of therapy, specific types of therapy, as long as I keep it away from the experiences that a client in particular might have had. So I start out in a new job, and you know, I see there's great good that gets done by all sorts of therapy institutions, but there's also kind of institutionalized wrongness that I would like to see change in my lifetime. You know, and I don't think that I'm alone strong enough to fight some of the wave of wrongness, but at least I recognize what's wrong, and I'll work to change it where I can. Some of the things I'm talking about here. There are some programs where a client would want to go for detoxification or addiction therapy, for substance abuse in particular. And let's say there are criteria in order to get into that detox program. One of them would be for alcohol, the client has to be under 0.300 and over 0.08 in order to qualify for the immediate detoxification program. So they show up in, say, an emergency room, and they will not be blowing anything, but they want to go to detox because they know that they're about to have the DTs. You know, they're about to start shaking. And the nurse is like, well, sorry, I can't place you because you aren't blowing over a 0.08, and you don't look like you're having a problem yet. You know? And you look like you could just walk right out of here, so here's your discharge papers. So, what do they have to do to get into detox? Well, they go down the street and buy a beer, or two or three, chug them, and then go right back to the hospital. So, part of the problem with getting in to detox is someone has to have the substances in their system in order to qualify for that treatment. And I find that to be amazingly stupid. If somebody says that they need treatment. You know, they're basically volunteering themselves for a seclusion that not many people find pleasing, because there's no phone calls from a detox, or inpatient treatment. All your phone calls are monitored and metered, and you can't, you know, you can't really interact with the outside world as much. And who wants to do that? The people who would be gaming the system by finding a bed to sleep in, that might be homeless or something, that is a problem. But to me, it seems like we're keeping them out, those people who would game the system, and we're making it harder for people who need the treatment to get the treatment without using their drugs. That sucks, and that happens all across America. The specific program that I work does not have that as a policy, but it has been a confusion among clients even before I got there, just talking to other therapists, that many people show up to this program with the idea that just like any other program that they've been to, they must show up on drugs, right? And given that it's a set length in the program that I work, the amount of efficacy that can be had in those first few days that a client gets in is kind of affected by the fact that they're on drugs and they're still getting off. And then there's a little bit of a withdrawal time. So those people who do show up on drugs, on substances, they get less actual benefit from the treatment, and they don't know any better. They don't know that they're not supposed to show up, testing positive. And it's a fight, and I wish that it was clearer to those who would come into our treatment, that it's not like most detoxes that they've been to. You don't have to be on the substance. You just have to have a problem with substances. Sometimes it's in the standard operating procedures that if someone is so incoherent on their substances that they won't have any benefit whatsoever for an entire week, then we would refer them to a detox center first and then have them come back to our program. But, that's a whole another week of their life possibly wasted because they don't understand that they don't have to be on the substances in order to get treatment. And a problem with that, first there's homeless people just looking for a bed who will find any way to get a free bed. That could be mitigated by having programs refer people to shelters and having more shelters. But I understand that the world doesn't work that way, and just because I want more shelters in the world doesn't mean that there's going to be more shelters. But another thing that could be different, I guess, is we could have less of a reliance on the empiric measure of, okay, they tested positive, we have this report that says that they tested positive from the lab, so then we can give them treatment. If it were not required by specifically Medicaid, but all sorts of insurance, that a positive UA result was required to begin treatment on that person, then we could just give people treatment based on them saying, I have a problem, without requiring them to go use drugs to prove that they have the problem. And I understand the want for empirical data that says that they have a problem, because there's a lot of people who don't like our taxpayer funds being abused. You know, and a lot of the care in any treatment facility goes back to taxpayer funds, even if only by Medicaid paying for them. And now even more so because of the Affordable Care Act, you know, giving people health care when they wouldn't have signed up for it before, routing millions of people into Medicaid. So now even more people are on the public assistance for their health care, and it creates a block that is hard to overcome, a barrier, because we have to prove that the person has a problem. So one way of proving it would be referral from the criminal justice system. You know, if they were arrested with drugs on them, well, then we have a piece of paper that says, yes, they empirically have a drug problem. You know, and those referrals can, you know, maybe serve as one way to not require them to have a hot drug test. But requiring that we actually find substances rather than other information that can tell us someone has a problem really limits how much we can do for people without forcing them to go use those substances and prove they have the problem. Let's see. One more issue that I've had, because this video is going to run long. One more issue that I've had in the particular treatment program that I am in. There are inpatients who have access to a video library for their free time. They have to go through a bunch of treatments throughout the day, but then they have a block of free time. And during that free time, they could pop in a DVD and watch a movie. Now, I'm of the mindset that while somebody is in an inpatient treatment facility, they should not be watching movies that would trigger their cravings without a therapist being there to help talk them through, you know, what is it about that trigger, you know, and help them to understand the trigger. That I can see like a triggering movie being used as a prompt for treatment, but not when they're in their free time. There are certain movies that have no redeemable qualities whatsoever. And in the program that I'm working for the treatment of clients, there is a video library that has all sorts of movies that they would love to watch, I'm sure, because they're human beings, but I don't want them watching. And it's not my call. So if I had control of the video library, there would be a bunch of Disney and Pixar movies in there for them, you know. Not that all of those Disney movies would be appropriate, but what do I not want to see in this video library? Movie number one on my list of movies that have no redeeming qualities in a therapeutic setting would be Boondock Saints, because it just stood out at me in that library. I'm like, what? Movie number two, Blade. It's about a vampire, which, you know, you just think about the correlations between addiction and a vampire wanting his blood all the time. You just think about that, okay? And then we've got a vampire who uses a substance so that he can walk during the day, and without that substance, he's, you know. So no vampire movies. Vampire movies bad for a therapy setting, especially when you're dealing with substance abuse. It's just not good. But those are just two of the movies that were in the library where clients can check out those movies and use them during their free time. There's a different library that I take offense at some of the things that are being used as therapy. Now, these are the movies that are set aside that clients cannot check them out because they're going to be used during a certain span of time within the amount of time that they're in that therapy. One of the therapies I've seen out of that would be watching The Lion King twice. And the first time you watch it from one of the two perspectives. The perspective of a father, and then you watch it from the perspective of a son. Right? So there's two mindsets to be in when watching it. And it's a treatment that helps people deal with their issues with masculinity and having masculine roles. And I don't think that it's the best therapy in the world, but it's one that's been used, right? And I don't find it patently offensive. I just think that some guys are still going to have that machismo that this kind of therapy is just not going to break through. But there are other movies up on that. Some are documentaries on addiction, and movies that basically play out like the before and after photos on billboards about meth. You know, the ones that I really did not like being on that shelf, I talked about with the person who was in charge of the library, and because of my interaction with that person, I actually was given as a hand-me-down one of the movies as it was removed from that library. And that movie right here is God's Not Dead. Now, I consider this movie to be apologetics propaganda, and really doesn't have much to do with therapy or treatment. It has more to do with trying to push God onto the clients, a specific God. And this type of indoctrination I don't like being part of any treatment at all. So, yay. Goes in my library now, my library of evil things. I've got a bunch in there. But there were two others that I'm going to have other discussions because they're being actively used for therapy. And I can't just, have them handed down to me or have them removed from the library yet. The first one, the lesser of these two leftover evils that is still in the library. The first one is called The Secret. Now, it's not just the movie, there is actually the book that's also in a different library for clients to check out and all. The magical sense that The Secret has, that you could just picture yourself doing anything you want and then it will happen. It seems to be a stripped down version of goal setting with magic added into it. And I think that you could probably do goal setting a lot better with a different movie. a different motivational movie. But because The Secret was an Oprah's book list bestseller, and, you know, because it has a lot of hype, and some therapist somewhere decided that it was awesome, because not all therapists have the same mindset as I do, that treatment should be evidence-based. This movie has ended up in the treatment library, and at least one therapist there is known to use it, so I have to talk with that therapist and see what we can do to change that, and maybe just impart my feelings about that. But the other movie, the one that really just stands out as, like, horrible tragedy as far as not having evidence-based therapy in a treatment facility, is What the Bleep Do We Know? If you are in any sort of skeptic circles that you might have been around in like for the last 10 years, you might have heard about this movie. There are many scientists who are interviewed in the movie who have tried to retract their statements from the movie because they say that they've been taken out of context, and that their involvement in the movie was actually gotten by way of a ruse, where they thought they were going to be in one type of movie and they ended up in another. But specifically in the movie, there is a point where a scientist is trying... A scientist, big quotes here. He's trying to sell us on the notion that if you were to yell and insult a glass of water and then look at it microscopically and then have a different glass of water and coax that one with loving words and encouragement, that on the microscopic level you will be able to see a difference in the molecular structure of the water, just based on the tone and the energy coming out of a human being, as far as the emotion side of things. Emotions will change the molecules in the water, and I believe that that is bullshit. And on top of that, I think anyone else with any sort of background in physics, maybe they took a physics class in high school or something, if they were subjected to this as treatment, you know, they would recognize the woo, and it would completely invalidate all of the rest of the treatment that they had received. They would be thinking about, well, how are they going to try to lie to me next? What sort of magical woo are they going to pop on me now? You know? It really undermines, for a skeptic who might be in treatment, it undermines the trust that the rest of the program would build up. You know? To be subjected to that as if it's the truth. To be subjected to the notion that there is no reality without people thinking it, and the only reason why this Mountain Dew exists right here is because collectively we've decided that aluminum exists, and this can take this form, and this is the standard shape of it. No. Contrary to that, I believe that if you put a Mountain Dew can in a room and shut the door for 50 years and then come back and open up the door, even without anyone perceiving that the Mountain Dew was there, it'll still be there. And this will even work for things that we did not previously know existed, and we could set about random circumstances whereby physical objects would exist in places, and just the whole theory of emotions manifesting in physical ways is something that I know therapists might want to use as, say, a more immediate form of hell. You know, to tell a client, oh, there's consequences, and it's not just something that you'll have to deal with when you get judged by God when you die. No, no. You know, the threefold rule of Wiccanism is in place here. You know, you will have karma come back on you, and all the evil that you put in the world is going to come right back to you. You know, it's one thing to teach a client to be more personable and to give them coping skills and help them be more social. And it's another to tell them that magically, by way of the properties of the cosmos, every time you do something out of anger, you're going to have karma return that anger to you, and bad things will happen to you. It's just not the case. And if your clients were referred from the criminal justice system, they probably know that before they got caught in whatever it was they did a lot of evil things, 100 times over before having a consequence. And the consequences that they're receiving are probably nowhere near what they deserve, if in fact there is some sort of threefold rule or karma out there. They know already that, no, you can be a dick in the world and you can reap a lot of pain and not have it come back on you. They know that. They've been doing it. And to put it before them that every time that they cause pain in the world, they're actually hurting themselves. No. These are guys that steal to feed their drug habits, and they know that they've stolen so many things that they can never repay, with pain upon themselves through karma. They know that they have done that to the world, and they have reaped benefits, They know this. They know that the cosmic system that is being described in What the Bleep Do We Know and The Secret is bullshit. I would rather clients be taught that cultivating relationships with your family and friends is something that you do at a loss. You don't get good stuff happening to you if you make a list of people and give each one of them a Christmas present. You can still end up with not that many Christmas presents, and that really reflects more on who you are as a person if you want to give that much of yourself than it does on the nature of the world or the nature of those people, Whether you're reaping a lot of havoc and evil in the world or trying to cultivate loving relationships, you're going to put a lot more energy into them than you're going to get out. And you just have to choose which is best for you. Breaking it down for a client in ways that are honest, I think, is important. Honesty and evidence-based therapy. But I suppose, to some, they don't feel like they're being dishonest because they would use information that they themselves have accepted as fact, that they would love to impart on others, like telling them, hey, Did you know the good news that Jesus exists and he'll forgive you for all that you've done? You know? And so they don't feel like they're lying. You know? Just the same as those who might use even new agey notions of karma. They don't feel like they're lying because they actually believe it. But in the end, clients suffer when they're told to work a system, work by a set of rules that end up being a letdown. What happens when they get that letdown? They go right back to the drugs. Why? Because drugs work. Every time they take them, they get a reaction. Proven, validatable, evidence-based, working. Drugs work. Pseudoscience does not. And they will use what works. If you want to get them off drugs, you got to give them something that works better. That's it for the first of any videos I make about being a therapist.